He was born into a city that told lies with a straight face. Washington, D.C. sold the world an image of order. Polished buildings, planned avenues, a sense of parliamentary calm. But behind that ceremonial skyline, there was a second capital. A hidden city with its own currency, its own vocabulary, its own gravitational pull. Rayful Edmond III was born into that hidden half of Washington, into a section of the map that never appeared on tourist brochures, yet controlled the rhythm of entire city blocks. His childhood wasn't chaotic, it was coded. What looked ordinary to outsiders was, for those living inside it, an encrypted economy. Kids in his zip code didn't just grow up in homes, they grew up inside ongoing equations. His earliest memories weren't of toys or parks, but of tone. The specific tone adults used when the doorbell rang, when the phone rang, when certain names were mentioned. There was a template of discretion that even a child could sense before he could possibly decode it. Conversation in his house moved like a river with invisible banks. It never overflowed, never revealed its true width, yet it carried a powerful force just beneath the surface. He didn't know the words illicit or countermarket yet, but he already understood there were two ways things were obtained. The way schools described and the way reality actually worked. School offered a simple, linear promise: patience first, reward later. But the blocks around him operated on a reverse tempo: reward now, cost later. And for a teenager surrounded by visible proof that the second tempo worked, cars parked where salaries couldn't explain them, apartments furnished beyond declared incomes, weekends funded without paychecks, the official script of slow, steady legitimacy felt like pure fiction. He didn't rebel against school, he simply outranked it. Information without leverage was just decoration, and the neighborhood taught leverage. He watched adults run a system that had no banner, no signboard, no declared head office, yet it paid mortgages, fed households, financed wardrobes, and upgraded lives. That contradiction shaped his entire way of thinking. If something produces stability, then it functions, regardless of whether it's legal. He didn't just absorb crime, he absorbed architecture. The way deals were disguised as favors, the way trust replaced contracts, the way timing substituted for paperwork. He grew up watching invisible decisions move visible matter. At the same time, outside forces were changing Washington. In the 1980s, the city wasn't just consuming more narcotics, it was completely reorganizing itself around a new supply logic. The old, small-scale trades were dying out. Velocity was replacing volume as the new measure of strength. A new kind of operator was needed, someone who could think in terms of throughput, not just fragments. Rayful reached adolescence at the exact moment the market was shedding its old skin. And timing is the one variable that genius cannot fake. He arrived at the right age during the right rupture. But from the inside, nothing about his origin point looked cinematic. There was no spotlight moment, no dramatic oath, no scene of recruitment. In underground systems, power doesn't appoint you. It migrates to the person whose mind can absorb the most load without breaking. Rayful had the one trait that substitutes for pedigree in unregulated economies. He could scale without announcing that he was scaling. He could grow an operation without growing its visibility. That single skill, amplification without noise, is the highest form of clandestine intelligence. While others were chasing currency, he was chasing control of the flow. He started to read people the way bankers read ledgers. Who responds fast? Who leaks information? Who improvises? Who waits for permission? Who mishears instructions? The network became his school, and the cast of characters within it were his curriculum. He learned that in shadow markets, mistakes don't need to be punished with violence. They punish themselves by collapsing profit. The most severe form of correction isn't physical impact, it's exclusion. He internalized a fundamental law. Currency moves toward competence the way water finds its lowest ground. The future that was waiting for him didn't announce itself with a trumpet blast. It slipped toward him gradually, in the form of delegated errands, trusted handoffs, and confidential instructions. One day he was merely reliable. The next day, he was indispensable. In worlds like this, rank isn't declared. It's revealed when the system begins routing through you instead of around you. By the time he even noticed that lines of dependence were all converging on his name, the transition had already happened. He hadn't entered an empire. An empire had quietly landed right in his lap. Washington, D.C. had no idea what had just begun. But a young man had just been positioned at the mouth of a pipeline that would soon rewrite the mathematics of an entire city.
Born to Constance, Bootsy Perry and Rayful Edmond II on November 26, 1964. Edmond grew up with 6 siblings, but in his own words, "I was the little baby brother, I was the king." 20 to 30 people lived in Edmond's home on any given day, including his grandmother, sisters, half-brothers and half-sisters, cousins and aunts. His tight-knit family crammed into his M Street Northeast home, and as Edmond described it, they just looked for ways to survive. As his mother recalled, "As long as he took care of me, I didn't care what he did." The family never asked too many questions and accepted fluctuations of legal and illegal incomes. His mother and father both worked for the government. Perry worked for the Department of Health and Human Services, and they hustled pills and other drugs to make ends meet. Little else is known of them at this time. However, there are allegations that Edmond Sr. was a major heroin distributor in the Washington, D.C. and Baltimore areas throughout the 1970s. In a recording from A Hidden Bug, Perry described how her son began his drug career. Edmond started as an apprentice by watching his parents sell narcotics and other prescription pills. Royal Brooks, Jr., one of Edmond's closest friends from Hamilton Junior High School, commented that Edmond was raised bagging stuff. At age 9, it is alleged that he carried cash for his mother when she sold pills on the street and became a runner for his father by picking up money from clients. He then started selling pills himself, finally peddling drugs on open market street corners. Federal investigators say that his father gave him his first kilogram of cocaine and, as Perry put it, "It just got too big and he just went up and went out on his own." Edmond pushed drugs alone and used his newfound cash to take his family out to dinner, contribute to paying bills, and support a new lifestyle. Eventually, Rayful brought in enough money to fund the family entirely. Though the circumstances were not ideal, Edmond excelled in many ways. He was a talented student and his teachers applauded his hard work ethic. In a documentary, his elementary school teacher, referred to as Ms. Wise, recalled, "He was good at reading, math, thinking, logic, remembering that he was born with the gift to be smart. And because of it, he had the edge on everyone else." At Dunbar High School, he won awards like Most Popular and Best Dressed, and one teacher, Mr. Grays, described him as a very well-listened. "I think he knew all the components, all the indicators, that would lead a person to success." He was known to be an excellent basketball player in high school, as well. When he graduated, Edmond enrolled in University of the District of Columbia, an unexpected move for someone from his walk of life. However, after a few months, Edmond dropped out to pursue the drug business because he was attracted to the potential profits. What begins to be clear from the analysis of his early life is that he valued his familial community above any other, and this theme stays constant as the communities around him change. Throughout high school and his infamous career, Edmond always put his family ahead by supporting and protecting them at any cost. He played the ultimate role of son, but in some ways he transcended traditional schemes of dependence in that he became the major breadwinner. His family ties created a moral spectrum through which he ran a family-oriented business, evidenced by his recollection that at one point in time, it was like a family thing. "I thought everybody was going to stick together." His early life provided a strong support system that collided with his business later in his life. In 1986, at age 22, Edmond was one of the largest drug dealers in the city, and he controlled between 20 and 30% of the cocaine market. Seeing the growing transition from cocaine to crack, he made essential drug connections with established kingpins like Cornell Jones and Tony Lewis. He worked at the Strip between Morton and Orleans Places Northeast, as well as 4th Street and M Street Northeast, only a few blocks north of the capital. His territory was supplied with escape alleys through which his men could outrun the police if they were ever caught in sticky situations. Edmond's enterprise operated out of his grandmother's house on M Street Northeast, in which he would process shake powder cocaine and crack rock cocaine. As his business grew, Edmond hired more employees, including gun-toting enforcers and about 150 sellers to hawk for him. Edmond handpicked local kids to be lookouts, and his own family was deeply involved in his business. As the number of addicts rose, Edmond's customer base gradually grew as well. On busy nights, his employees carried out as many as 30 transactions per minute, bringing in about $5,000 per week each, totaling about $750,000 for the organization. Impressively, at the height of his success, he made $2 million in a week. Edmond's company sold about 1,700 kilos of Colombian cocaine each month, which he trafficked from Los Angeles on a regular basis. He also supported others to start their own trades. For instance, Alta Reyes Anvil, one of Edmond's closest female callers, worked with him extensively through the late 1980s. He paid her in cocaine, which allowed her to start her own illicit business. Edmond exploited his economic community and his neighborhood this way, proving that he could be successful and achieve the rags-to-riches American dream. Despite his success, tragedies arose. Under his command, his men committed as many as 30 murders and went on violent sprees in order to protect the company's territory and assert power. As he later told reporter Juan Williams, "Things like that can happen, but don't misinterpret. I'm not saying drugs is good neither. And I'm not saying that it's bad. But it's a way of life and it's a part of our life. So it's something we have to deal with." Edmond moved through these stations as an uncompromising and savvy businessman. John P. Dominguez, an assistant U.S. attorney, noted, "He could remember deals, transactions, to the penny. Just think of what he could have done, legitimately. He had a knack for marketing and he boasted his power in order to create a stable and constant financial flow, dominating the competition." Though eyewitness reports and personal testimony conflict with each other, Edmond used his wealth lavishly. For example, he not only rented a rather unremarkable house and flew with discount airline tickets, but he also spent ridiculous sums of money that garnered attention. Diane Sawyer began her 60 Minutes interview with Edmond with the haunting words, "Walk down any street in Northeast Washington, and people will tell you here, he was the reigning king. He was a man to be admired and imitated." In the time span of about 1 month in 1988, Edmond traveled to Los Angeles twice and ran up $5,358 in hotel bills, which he paid in cash. He had a custom-made Rolex watch, which he had diamond-encrusted and is now worth over $45,000. He had multiple luxury cars, including a Mercedes-Benz, a Porsche, and a Jaguar. His house was apparently littered with garbage bags filled with small bills. He let money fly from the windows of his vehicles and showered his multiple female admirers with gold-hooped earrings. Though Edmond became extremely wealthy, he stayed in the neighborhood. It was safe and known, but it also was the center of his business. There, he had a powerful impact and a lasting impression. The local children adored him, and when he pegged them to stand lookout, many were honored to do so. Kids looked up to him. They respected him. If they ever had any problems, they could come and talk to him. They saw him as a big brother, said the director of a local recreational center about Edmond. He often was found playing basketball at the community courts, engaging children in conversation. He was kind and thoughtful, and many people saw him as a blessing to the community. Although his actions were illicit, he was always willing to do a favor, like give $200 worth of flowers for the family of neighbor Stacy Lanny when Lanny's brother died, and cover people's bus fares or help with monthly bills. When he had the money, he made sure to give back, promoting himself as a child of the community. At the height of his success, Edmond gave his friends and family members many gifts and even ran a community boys and girls club basketball team, which he called the Men at Work. He would roam the streets of the Northeast Corridor of D.C. giving away $100 bills to children in the area. This financial power shift was vital to Edmond, and he justified his illicit lifestyle by claiming that his family and his neighborhood needed his contributions, even while using them as his customer base. This age of luxury all came crashing down on April 15, 1989, when Edmond was arrested at his girlfriend's house in D.C. 4 men had been arrested in Los Angeles after trying to buy $1 million worth of coke from an undercover agent, and when they began to talk, they incriminated Edmond's association, his power, and his success. Later, the Drug Enforcement Administration stated that the arrest resulted from a 2-year joint investigation conducted by the FBI and district police. It is unclear about the specifics of what happened next, except that Edmond was moved from the district jail to an outside location before proceedings began. Thus began his 56-day trial, during which Edmond only testified to plead indigence. He was charged with multiple counts of continuing criminal enterprises, conspiracy to maneuver around narcotics laws, racketeering, and other charges. He shared the dock with 27 other people, including his mother, his sister, and his father, among 8 other family members, as well as close friends Brooks Jr., Columbus Little Nut Daniels, an enforcer, and Tony Lewis. Over 100 witnesses took the stand throughout the trial, and the media eagerly tracked its progress. Because of Edmond's support on the outside, those connected with the trial were in great danger. The court hosted the first anonymous jury in Washington history because they were threatened with violence and they were shielded with bulletproof glass in the courtroom. His was not done in vain. During the trial, a 17-year-old witness was killed in an apparent drive-by shooting. His name was Donald P. Winley, a part-time gopher for Edmond who was set to take the stand only days after he was killed. Another witness's house was firebombed during the proceedings. For his own protection, Edmond was held at Quantico Marine Base in Virginia through the duration of the trial, and he was flown in by helicopter each day to participate. Edmond's main arguments for his innocence were twofold. First, he maintained that since he did not sell to children, he was not doing anything illegal. Those who were old enough, he said, could make their own decisions and buying drugs was their own choice. Second, he declared that he was never caught directly selling drugs, so officials could not pin anything on him. Though he tried, these arguments simply did not materialize into case-changing evidence. He was represented by Baltimore lawyer William H. Murphy Jr. and eventually by attorney James Robertson. Both respected their client, and Murphy even felt that Edmond was one of the brightest people he had ever represented, but that his life of crime was almost inevitable because it was inculcated from an early age. Though the two lawyers were found arguing in the courtroom, they worked together. Robertson yielded that 10 of the other defendants were involved in a drug conspiracy and even praised the prosecuting attorneys, but he continued to deny that Edmond was directly involved. Robertson attacked the witness and informant's credibility, maintaining that Edmond's perceived wealth came from lucky gambling ventures. Yet Edmond kept his head on his shoulders, constantly changed his story, and flirted with news reporters and witnesses alike. Edmond kept an unarguable confidence about himself through the trial. As reporter Elsa Walsh commented, "What I discovered, instead, was the same confident Edmond that I had seen day after day in the courtroom. He showed no remorse. He was affable, courteous, and intelligent, talking as if his future was bright. He never expected to go to prison, but he was not afraid to so do either, and in his very own words, what's there to be scared about prison?" Nevertheless, Edmond watched his life and his business go down in flames, betrayed by his closest friends. A number of his friends testified against him. For instance, Zanville helped federal prosecutors by carrying a secret microphone that recorded Perry talking about her son's enterprise. It is from these tapes that Perry inadvertently produced the most incriminating evidence against her son. Zanville cut a deal for herself before her own operation was officially busted and worked with federal authorities to avoid jail time. In return for her cooperation, she was left her riches and her mansion, all financed by her own cocaine enterprise without threat of a criminal charge. However, she betrayed her community, and in the words of her ex-husband, Myron Zanville, she'll tell anybody anything to cover herself. Then, Brooks Jr. informed on Edmond as well, testifying that he stored as much as 90 grams of cocaine for Edmond and carried as much as $3 million of Edmond's money to arrange drug buys in Los Angeles. Edmond remembered, "Me and him was like brothers. Me and him were real tight," and later lamented, "If they really care, and love me like they were supposed to, they wouldn't have did certain things." Edmond remained quiet throughout the presentation of this incriminating evidence. The trial became very dramatic when Edmond's sister Rochelle became the first family member to describe him as a drug dealer, while denying her own involvement. His father refused to testify, claiming his Fifth Amendment rights, and his mother also denied that she was ever involved with drugs. The courtroom was muddled with conflicted testimony, but the evidence was all too strong for Edmond's defense. After 5 days of deliberation, Edmond was sentenced to life in prison, serving 2 terms simultaneously without the possibility of parole. 28 other people were convicted as well. His mother got 24 years in prison. His sister, Rochelle, who did indeed handle the finances of his operation and stored cocaine, was sentenced to 21 years. His brother, Melvin Stewart, was sentenced to 24 years, and his co-conspirators also were similarly sentenced. Through his widely publicized court case, Edmond had the front page of every local newspaper. People followed his story closely. He was so loved at the beginning, in fact, that people came to his defense when he was arrested, making statements like, he may have been guilty of knowing the wrong people, but Rayful wasn't no dope pusher. He became the face of the underground drug world and street kids praised him. I looked up to him, said a man only called Bam Bam who was interviewed about Edmond. I liked the fact that he made money. He started small. Even if it wasn't an honest job, he worked hard. But his trial exposed a dirty underworld of crime and violence and his reputation was mixed. It is plausible that he was the reason that many young people all over the city engaged in a life of violence and crime, but he bore no personal responsibility. He was not emotionally involved, because for him, business was business. People chose their own paths, he maintained, and he could not be accountable for those who chose to destroy their lives. Further, Edmond gave this attitude to save his family's dignity. After all, Edmond had always been a family man and was not about to stop now. Shortly after his arrest, people filled the void he left very quickly. His territory was parceled off, runners became dealers, dealers became lords, and the system went on. Though they got a big name off the street, it did not stop the drug crisis, others simply took Edmond's place. Even when he got to prison, Edmond did not see his faults and was always hopeful that the next appeal or more evidence might exonerate him. He entered Bureau of Prisons custody on February 16, 1990, where he was processed at United States Penitentiary, USP in Marion, Illinois. On September 27, he was transferred to USP Lewisburg in Pennsylvania, a high-security institution with about 1,000 inmates. For some time, Edmond was held in solitary confinement because of overwhelming safety concerns surrounding his notoriety, but eventually he was moved to general population and given a job in the prison as an orderly. This good inmate strategy did not last for long. A few months after he was sent to prison, he met perhaps the most important people of his career. Dixon Dario Trujillo Blanco was an inmate at USP Lewisburg who shared a cell block with Edmond, while Trujillo Blanco's brother, Osvaldo, was only one cell block away. The Trujillo Blanco brothers landed in prison for dealing drugs. In fact, they were among the biggest drug suppliers from Colombia to the United States. Their mother was the infamous Griselda, the godmother, Blanco, who led the Medellin drug cartel and wreaked havoc on the streets of Miami. Blanco was ruthless. She allegedly killed 2 of her husbands, created the infamous motorcycle drive-by shootings, and was known as a ruthless sexual deviant. Like Edmond, the brothers were exposed to and taught the ways of the drug trade from an early age. Blanco had helped them organize and run a tremendous cocaine export empire out of Colombia, based in Medellin. The brothers lived in the shade of their mother, which paralleled in an odd way Edmond's complete devotion to his own family. Thus, all three had a family business commonality through which they interacted. When Edmond went to prison, his suppliers in Los Angeles did so as well. When he met the Trujillo Blanco brothers, however, Edmond was suddenly connected to a new supply of relatively inexpensive wholesale cocaine, first by their acquaintances and finally by the brothers themselves. Through prison, he was introduced to a peer community, with which he had to partner because he could not exploit it. Criminals just as savvy and dangerous as himself surrounded him, and he decided to use his connections in this population to continue his dominance in his economic community. Using his drug connections on the outside, Edmond began setting up deals and introduced Washington drug traffickers to his new Colombian friends. The brothers had only 2 years left to serve when they met Edmond, and when they were paroled in early 1992, they returned to Colombia with an eager new customer. Through a system of codes, Edmond and the Trujillo brothers worked out a way through which he could use the telephones in the prison, which were theoretically tapped at all times to broker arrangements. For instance, Edmond would make a collect call to a domestic number, to a girlfriend, drug dealer, or employee, and said person would conference a Colombian telephone line. Thus, he was easily able to make arrangements with the Trujillos. That is not to say that the Lewisburg correctional officers and phone monitors did not recognize his suspicious activity. In fact, they actively let it slide because the justice system had achieved its goal. Rayful was locked up. Prison officials were not concerned with Edmond continuing to break the law, because in their eyes, the system had won and Edmond was off the streets. According to Office of the Inspector General reports, on October 21, 1990, the phone monitor noted that Edmond was talking to Squirrel about what seemed to be drug deals, and a later report clarified that Edmond felt that just because I'm locked up, it doesn't mean I can't get what I need. Edmond was put on the hot list for the suspicious calls and was mentioned to not only the prison warden but also the FBI for his continuing drug activity. The intelligence gathered by correctional officers and FBI officials was noted but not acted upon. They knew he frequently made international three-way calls, both strictly forbidden within the prison, and yet, his case was seemingly lost in the bureaucracy of the prison's intelligence system. FBI Special Agent Richard Rogers, who was assigned to USP Lewisburg, said at the time, Rayful Edmond was not perceived by me to be any significant criminal individual in which the FBI may have had an interest. He was simply one of many drug dealers. It seems likely by these accounts that the BOP did not react to the growing evidence of Edmond's continued criminal activities, at least until they had a compelling reason to stop it. His phone calls were specifically monitored on December 17, 1991 and January 19, 1991, but the BOP only stated that the investigation continues. Reports emerged stating that Edmond was not a major criminal threat even if he was making drug deals within the federal walls. The BOP could not stop it after all. At USP Lewisburg alone, more than 80,000 calls were placed each month, many of which were used to tap into drug networks. However, in August of the following year, an unidentified FBI tipster informed on Edmond. For a 6-month period, the federal agency was court-required, based on the informer's testimony, to listen in on Edmond's calls. It was through these formal investigations that they realized Osvaldo Trujillo was the voice on the other end. But the meanings were lost as the brothers and Edmond used obscure codes for all of their business. For instance, they used phrases like, "You should meet my new girlfriend. She's 6 feet tall," followed by, "She lives down where we used to live on 22nd Street. Thus, Edmond brokered 6 kilos of cocaine for $22,000 under prison guards' active scrutiny. Edmond was known to have made 60 calls like this in less than 5 hours, running his empire from jail. In October 1992, Osvaldo died, and with him had followed Edmond's main connection to Colombian cocaine. The FBI almost immediately suspended its investigation on him and moved on to catch the remaining co-conspirators on the outside. Both the District of Columbia and the Middle District of Pennsylvania's U.S. Attorney's offices filed a statement declaring that Edmond was unlikely to be indicted for continuing criminal activities within federal prison. Perhaps not surprisingly, the BOP did not respond to the taped evidence. Edmond was not even punished within the prison. His phone privileges were never suspended, and in an interview in 1998, Edmond had stated that he could collect calls from 6:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. each day with plenty of time to do business. If he were restricted to phone use only once a week, his operations would have failed completely. It took 10 to 15 calls over 1 or 2 days to broker a complete deal. Further, his status as an orderly gave him a distinct advantage, allowing him to use untapped phones in the office and knowing when easygoing security guards would be on duty. In the end, Edmond actually had drugs brought into USP Lewisburg 50 to 60 times in order to sell on the premises, and he was never worried about interception because the prison guards had no street knowledge. Edmond seemingly ruled USP Lewisburg. He knew which security cameras to dodge, he used the guards like playthings, and he brokered over 3,500 pounds of cocaine during his stay. At the time, he reminisced, my mindset was, I had to still have people look up to me and prove that I was still capable of making things happen. Edmond used the thousands of dollars of commission that he earned to help his family and friends. He sent money to his siblings and parents, as well as to female callers and former associates. Clearly, neither the FBI nor the BOP, or even the USP Lewisburg warden were concerned with Edmond's continuing drug trade, at least for the time being. As such, Edmond was able to use his peer community to once again make it to the top. The FBI had to do something to assert their authority, however way possible. In the summer of 1994, agents confronted Edmond, explaining what they knew and what the repercussions could be for dealing crack cocaine in prison. And they asked me to cooperate, Edmond said. He was released back into general population after a period of administrative segregation as an undercover informant, but this time as an aide to the law enforcement community. Though the drug trade crippled the neighborhood, there was a certain mystique and pride in it being Edmond's place. They were his people. His tarnished name still holds a kind of pride, not quite killing his legend. Most of Edmond's friends have since been released from prison and many are living honest, drug-free lives. For instance, one of Edmond's accomplices, Kurt Bone Chambers, now owns the reputable Alders Urban Apparel. Others still communicate with each other and a few reminisce about their time working for Edmond. For all the damage Edmond caused, he is a relatively unknown figure in Washington's past. Perhaps in time, after more scholarly research has been established, he may become truly infamous. Rayful Edmond was not a hero, nor was he a blessing for his community, but he was nonetheless an important character in the history of Washington, D.C. Through a set of prioritized morals, Edmond ruined parts of his city by distributing one of the most addicting substances in existence. Thus, Edmond's clientele base continually expanded. People spent thousands to feed their addictions and Edmond reaped the rewards of their unfortunate cycle of desperation. He felt no remorse or guilt in illicitly selling drugs, because he felt morally compelled to help his own family. In his own way, Edmond lived with very high standards, and put his family members before himself. He even sacrificed his reputation, arguably the most important thing to maintain in the drug business, to shorten his mother's prison sentence. What confounds this thinking is that while he helped his own family, he ruined thousands more, including those in his own neighborhood. People sold their livelihoods to crack as soon as they started using. He used each of his communities to help him provide for his familial community without thought of the consequences. Thus, as he moved through these communities, his priorities changed, his behaviors changed, and his conceptions of the world changed. In an age during which it was difficult for an inner-city black youth to escape a cycle of poverty, Edmond looked for any...
The case may be closed, but criminology never sleeps. Like and subscribe at Join Criminology, and step deeper into the dark with us.